November is Native American Heritage Month, a rich part of our history and tradition in Western New York.
And that's why we're here at the Buffalo History Museum for this month's edition of commUNITY. And over the next half hour or so, we're going to be focusing on Native culture, Native arts, and also how they're coping with this pandemic on Native lands.
And that is why we are masked up. We're going to go inside of the Buffalo History Museum to see how they are actually observing Native American Heritage Month.
All right, and here we are inside. I am thankful. And we are joined by, and I'm thankful to be joined by Patrick Ryan from the History Museum. You're the education coordinator. Correct?
Education coordinator, yeah.
Now tell me about the first of all, it's Native American Heritage Month.
Correct.
And how are you guys marking that?
So not only obviously do we have our stuff in the museum as far as our Native American gallery, which has been here at least in this iteration since 2013, but we also, due to COVID, are offering a lot of online things as well, especially for what month it is. We have a lot of videos on there. We're going to be adding a lot more content for people to look at as well.
Yep, and we're being socially distant, and that's
correct.
A nice space here. This is kind of the crown jewel of the Western New York Native American collection, isn't it?
Correct, yeah. So this is our piece medal, the red jacket medal. We would call it probably our most premier object in the museum. For those who aren't familiar, Red Jacket was a Seneca chief in the area. He was very famous for his skills as an orator, and basically when the revolution was over, the Americans realized that they had to foster better relations with Native Americans, especially in the Western New York area. So they were invited to Philadelphia, and there they met with General Washington, and he presented him with this medal. It's essentially just a friendly medal between the two groups to illustrate that we would rather foster trade and peaceful relationships rather than, not so friendly relationships, yeah.
Can you talk about why in Western New York people should really pay attention to the Seneca Nation, Native Americans, because of our rich history?
Yeah, I mean, their history, scales back quite a long time in this specific area, and a lot of the time, with the Six Nations, they're kind of just treated as, Native Americans, but that's really not the whole truth. There's 6 different, nations within a nation, if you will, and each of them has their own unique history, which, people should definitely take note of.
Yeah, and we deal with so many stereotypes in this world, and the Haudenosaunee and the Six Nations, they're kind of, they're not always portrayed accurately, because we think of the Plains Native Americans and the headdresses and everything.
Correct.
But the natives who occupied here, the neutrals and then the Six Nations, very much different than the stereotype that we're often seeing.
Correct, yeah, definitely markedly different. And, we worked with many members of the Seneca Nation, including Dennis Bowen. He was the former president of the Seneca Nation. So, we always try to work with the respective groups so that they can kind of help us help them tell their story, if you will. Just one of the first things that I'll, take, prospective groups on is just a showcase of our Gastoas. It kind of shows the 6 different nations here, Mohawk, Onondaga, Oneida, Cayuga, Tuscarora, and Seneca. It's not just one homogenous group. It's multiple groups with their own, unique culture.
What do all these represent? I mean, I know you talked about the Mohawk, the Onondaga, but there's beauty in all of it.
Correct, yeah. So basically just how they're styled, if you will. Each of them, as you can see, they have their own unique styling. So if you see like the Onondaga has 1 feather, the Oneida has multiple feathers. It's just showing, what chiefs of each respective clan would have worn. So this right here is going to be essentially sort of like a wampum necklace. It would have been a necklace given either among the Native Americans or perhaps from Native Americans to, European settlers, just a symbol of peace between two groups, yeah. Kind of like how General Washington and the Americans gave, the Haudenosaunee the Red Jacket medal. Red Jacket and the Natives actually presented Washington with a wampum. It's just their kind of symbol, their symbol of peace between 2 nations, yeah.
There was a period of time with the residential schools and that they were stripped of their history, stripped of their language. It seems like there's a big effort in getting back to that and reestablishing that connection with the elders and beyond.
Our young people are speaking and more and getting better at speaking the language, and we encourage them to continue and to not stop in the future.
You stay optimistic, you believe that what you're doing is for a better cause, you believe that what you're doing is for the future of not just you or your family or even the children here. Really what we're doing is for the nation. Really, us as a people.
All things considered, it is a relatively understudied aspect of history, especially Western New York history, and it shouldn't be. So, you know, it's definitely nice to see kind of an uptick in importance placed on it. Especially, you know, I know that the Haudenosaunee, they're opening their own Seneca museum in Salamanca as well, where, you know, some more of their story can be told.
Did you know about a soon-to-come first Native American-owned contemporary art gallery in Buffalo? It will be a first in the U.S., according to the owner, Dave Kemmelberg.
There are a few museums, national museums, that are dedicated to Native American art, but there's no real commercial art gallery out there that focuses on that type of work. This is designed to bring that type of art, which is frankly overlooked in the general art market, to that market and to potentially to collectors.
He says Native American communities' culture and art tend to be overlooked because they are not seen day to day, and people see them more as a historical artifact. 10 Native artists from across the United States and Canada will have their work front and center at K-Art.
Our goal and the focus is for folks in Buffalo to see that these Native nations and people exist across the country and across North America, but also we're focused on a national scale too, to bring that sort of people seeing what we're doing nationally.
K-Art is on Main Street in Buffalo, and it's set to open December 11th.
We've adapted in the sense that we're building out a much more robust online platform, and we're going to have a virtual sort of opening the night before the actual physical opening. So, you know, we're making changes like everybody else.
Coming up next on Community, coronavirus and the Native American. We speak with one of the foremost experts on the pandemic and how it's affecting Native populations.
So just by being American Indian, I mean, we have a significant health threat on us related to this virus.
Welcome back to Community. This month we are remembering the first people who ever walked these lands as we celebrate Native American Heritage Month.
Of course, we are celebrating Native American Heritage Month during a pandemic, and we had a chance to speak with an infectious disease expert, a Seneca, named Seneca.
Dean Seneca is the founder of Seneca Scientific Solutions and is providing assistance to tribal nations, urban Native communities, along with municipalities, states, and even the federal government. He has spent the last 8 months, like many others, tracking numbers and trends.
I think just like the rest of the country, you know, things were pretty calm in the months of like August, September, and October. But since the middle of October to now, cases are rising throughout Indian country. I mean, there's not an area in Indian country that hasn't seen a significant rise.
But Seneca says it's the numbers behind the numbers that are the biggest concerns when it comes to Native populations.
Peter, here's the big thing, you know, when it comes to this. Just by being American Indian, you know, you are 3.5 times more likely to become infected because our incidence rates are that much higher, and you're 5.5% or 5.5 times more likely to be hospitalized. You know, so just by being American Indian, I mean, we have a significant health threat on us related to this virus.
Seneca has plenty of experience in this field. As a senior scientist at the CDC, he spent nearly 20 years fighting the spread of disease, was a first responder with the H1N1 outbreak, led a polio task force in Afghanistan, and was the lead health scientist for the CDC's Ebola response in Africa.
In fact, he was recognized by his alma mater, UB, with an Alumni Achievement Award for his work in fighting pandemics. But now it's personal for him. This pandemic is disproportionately impacting his people.
Many of our tribal nations are struggling making test kits in their community. Many of our tribal nations are seeing increases in death rates.
The mortality rate is up in Native populations. Infection rates are 3.5 times the general population, and hospitalization rates are even worse.
If you are infected, because we have many pre-existing conditions, we are 5.5 times more likely to be hospitalized. I mean, that's a huge thing. If you look at 5.5 times compared to the non-Indian population, that means that most likely if you get COVID-19, you're pretty much going to go to the hospital.
Part of the issue is health factors already facing Native Americans, but also the family dynamic, where you often see several generations and extended family living under the same roof.
That's the way we're able to cope. That's the way we're able to laugh. That's the way we're able to, continue our culture as Native people, is by gathering together as, big family units and big communities coming together to talk with one another, to heal one another. It's good for mental and behavioral health, which we're finding out in the larger populations. But Native people have been doing this for centuries.
So beyond the coronavirus itself, there are other health issues arising, such as depression.
Not being able to do that and, is really a huge mental health impact in Native populations.
But one thing that is key to fighting COVID in all populations is contact tracing and following simple health guidelines. Some of the same things he saw in fighting Ebola in Africa. Unfortunately, he's also seeing some of the same problems he saw in the developing world.
A lot of the same things. We have people that don't believe that the virus is real. We have people not adhering to safe social distancing and doing your proper prevention. I mean, it's almost like we have many of the same characteristics among our developed country, that I saw in the developing world. And it's almost shocking to me. I'm going, hey guys, we're the United States. No, we're supposed to be the leaders in this.
And as we start to climb the mountain of this second wave, SENECA says vigilance is our greatest weapon.
If there's one person that's not doing that, they are impacting the health of everybody else. So we need everybody together in this effort.
When it comes to business, the Seneca Nation is all about it. There is a plan by the nation to add a gas station and convenience store right across the street from the downtown Buffalo Creek Casino. Here you will find cheaper gas and merchandise that's normally available inside stores on the Seneca Reservation. This new gas station is expected to add 14 jobs and open in early 2021. The people of the Seneca Nation, they are grateful and thankful. Here's our Terry Belke.
For Native American people, the giving of thanks is not just a one-day holiday. In their culture, showing gratitude is an everyday thing, a way of life. They give thanks to the Creator, to Mother Earth, and for the many blessings received throughout one's life, doing so in many different ways. We in New York State live within a short distance of many Native nations, including the Seneca, Mohawk, and Tuscarora. Learning from them is as simple as reaching out to any member of our community.
This is Gayo Gayo. It's the old moccasin dance in honor of our elders.
Thanksgiving should be broken down into giving thanks and giving. And you put those words together, and it should be every day. You should be giving thanks every day.
Where every day is a thank you by showing gratitude for what you're about to receive and what you have received.
Native Americans have held fast to their traditional beliefs and are now seeing them blossom again at a time they are sorely needed.
A lot of our traditional ways have been lost or forgotten due to the assimilation and colonization of our communities. When the government put us on reservations and then took away the children into the boarding schools and weren't allowed to practice our culture and our ways.
Our young ones are going back to see who they are because they never knew who they were, They never knew, that what the teachers taught them in schools, that history book, wasn't exactly right.
Coming up next on Community, we celebrate an act of kindness, bravery, and brotherhood going back more than 2 centuries, the Tuscarora Heroes.
A moment of horror and heroes captured in bronze.
This is about a forgotten moment in a forgotten war.
The sculpture at the corner of Center and Portage greets visitors to Lewiston, but memorializes a morning of sheer terror, December 19th, 1813.
Hundreds of First Nations and British troops ran down Lower River Road toward Lewiston, destroying everything in their path.
British troops and their Western Indian allies descended upon the small village.
They were armed with torches, guns, and tomahawks.
Hell-bent on avenging the burning of Newark, which is now known as Niagara-on-the-Lake.
There was blood running down the street. There were atrocities that occurred. One 7-year-old boy was scalped and shot in front of his mother's eyes.
But then, out of nowhere,
they started hearing horns on top of the escarpment.
Dozens of Tuscaroras arrived.
They knew this was going to happen.
And they knew they had to help their settler friends.
There were only 30 Tuscarora men in this. They were outnumbered 30-1.
But the amount of racket they stirred up gave the illusion of many more.
Scaring the enemy into thinking that a counterattack was going to take place and that they were running into a trap stopped the enemy in its tracks, allowing Lewiston people enough time to escape.
Neil Patterson Sr.'s great-great-great-grandfather was among the Tuscaroras that came to help.
He was 9 or 10 years old, and he came down, and he was trying to, he's going to help the people.
And Michael Hibbard's ancestor, John Robinson, was also there on that fateful day.
He, with the help of the Tuscaroras, was able to save a lot of lives in this village.
As he looks at this monument, the impact this show of support and friendship had is not lost upon him.
If it wasn't for the Tuscaroras helping my ancestor, John Robinson, I probably wouldn't be here.
A pivotal moment in time captured in bronze and within the unknown stories of Western New York.
All right, welcome back to Community. As we all know, no show would be complete without some music.
And you know I love it. This time, we're talking Native Americans, so why not delve into the music with a guy named Joe Mafood. Joe Mafood is from Six Nations Indian Reservation.
With Native peoples, our history runs very deep, and in our culture and in our community, it's very highly regarded. Creativity is very important in the way we function and the way we operate.
Mafood started playing music at a young age while living in Riverside.
Like 6th grade, I wrote a bunch of music and started a band with my uncle and a couple of guys from the neighborhood. And we started giving concerts at School 60. And from there, I went to Buffalo Performing Arts and I started to do like some more formalized type of training.
You love music and you wanted to make sure that your heritage was not forgotten either. How did you incorporate your heritage into your music?
Well, pretty simply, one of the bands that I worked in was an all-native band, and we were called the Pappy Johns Band, and we had a couple albums. We won a lot of awards called Can-Am's Canadian Aboriginal Awards, and we were invited to play all over the world, and we played major festivals, and basically our claim on that whole thing was that we were an all-native band.
Is there a difference between Native American music and maybe rock and roll, heavy metal, R&B? How do you differentiate it?
Well, there are really successful Native artists in all of those genres. And there's always that spirit in their music. Like it always has that certain spirit to it where they connect deep to what it is that they're performing. We're an evolving culture of people, just like everybody else. I took a bunch of kids from my old high school on expeditions, and they spent a couple of days with me on the reservation. And they were surprised to see everybody driving cars and having cell phones, which astounded me, to be honest with you, because I never really saw that they thought that I went home on a horse or anything like that. We do have like that traditional music and those traditional sounds and that traditional stuff. you know, done with the hand drum and on the water drum and all those dances that go really far back, and they're passed down through generations. Blues is a really big style of music on the reservations. And now, a lot of the kids now, they're really getting into hip hop. And as a musician and as a guy that spent 20 years as a school teacher, when I listen to the modern hip hop artists and I look back as blues as being my real primary genre, when I listened to what a blues artist was doing, they were using the instrumentation of the day and they were talking about the time. So the kids feel that and they're drawn to it. So now when I go up and play, a lot of times, you know, they want me to have a rap artist on the bill with, you know, me would be in a straight up traditional blues band type of thing. And those are some pretty cool endeavors. Instead of working at Super Duper, I worked for Crash Cadillacs and the T Street Cruisers all through high school. So it was like a 50s cover band, processing the do-rags, and then they became the Homeboys. I worked for Lance Diamond. I was with the Hurricanes Blues Band. Then after the Hurricanes with Jerry Sampson, I started JJ Swing. I left that because I started working with the Pappy Johns Band, and that was the all-native band. And we had those albums that became really successful, so we got invited to these. It was a dream. Recorded an album with Appleby Reinhardt Mahfoud called Echoes in Time.
And today, he's still playing.
I just hire cats that can do the charts right and say, hey, yo, I want to play tomorrow. Let's play these tunes. And they're like, got you, and we go and roll.
Wow, what a great way to wrap up another edition of Community. Joe is such a talent, and I love his point about how the blues and hip-hop were kind of both music of the people, you know?
Exactly. If you have a story idea that you would like to see covered on Community, feel free to reach out to Pete or myself anytime on social media.
Yeah, we'll see you next time on Community.